Do I Do It?
Welcome to week 3 of the Do I Do It podcast. Episode 3. We're on a roll.
Yes, we're on a roll.
Yes. This week we had an amazing guest, as usual. We've been so lucky. Theo, tell me about our guest.
We had the chance to talk with Shani Akilah, a South London author who's published her first novel, or first short story collection, For Such a Time as This, which we talk about at length in the podcast, in the episode. Shani was like someone who I think was like an early, maybe like we didn't realize it at the time, but like an early inspiration for what we're doing with the podcast. So how did we meet her?
Well, so one of my favorite coffee shops, and we talk about this in the episode, so I'm not going to go into too many details, but Theo and I went to this coffee shop. I just wanted to show him, and then there was a book talk, and Shani was the author that was doing the book talk, and so that was a really cool, we stayed and listened to her conversation, and I mean, just hearing her story about how she decided to be a writer and going through that process of publishing and that kind of thing was just so cool. And I chatted with her after, and she's just like a wonderful person to chat with too. So yeah, being able to expand on her story and her whole kind of experience and ask the question of why did she go for it was really cool.
I think like in that book talk at Morocco Bound, she was just so open about and like so insightful about the process of like going from having not been a published author to now being a published author with a book deal with an agent, with all of this industry knowledge, and in quite a short amount of time. Like we get into that a bit in the podcast, but she was just so like open and insightful, like I said, about that process. And I think, and we definitely got into that in the episode. We definitely got like to hear more about that. And also, of course, we're getting kind of this like theme of each of our guests, and we'll continue doing this, I think, is each of our guests sharing kind of something about their art. So we had the privilege of having Shani read one of the stories in her work, and that was really cool.
So you get a taste of her writing, and that was the other thing that we talk a little bit about at the very end, is how to get access to her book. So in the UK you can get her book at all sorts of different places. We talk about that, but if you're not in the UK, if you're in Canada, let us know if you want a copy of the book, and we can definitely make that happen, because we're coming back to Canada soon for a visit, so that is something that we can definitely make happen. But send a message either to
or comment or whatever.
Exactly. Commenting
it helps the algorithm.
Yeah, we love the algorithm. So that's the other thing, is that we're so happy that so many of you are so engaged in the podcast. So follow on Spotify, follow on YouTube, follow on Instagram, the whole thing. That really helps. But yeah, and comment, let us know what you think. We love the feedback.
If there's any questions that you'd like to hear us talk to people about, that's what we're here for. That's what we're doing.
And we've been recording quite a few of the next coming episodes, and they're so exciting. And so this is going to continue, and we can't wait to show you more of the artists that we've been able to chat with and explore all sorts of different kind of paths and really start to answer the question of, do I do it? Hopefully for you, and for us too.
Enjoy.
Welcome to our living room.
Thank you.
We're very excited to have you. The first time that we heard about you was actually kind of a crazy story, because we went to one of my favorite coffee shops, and you were doing a book talk, and then we stayed and hung out and listened and learned so much, and I was like, this is so amazing. So
we didn't know that there was anything going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
we fully just because that was the first time I'd been there, and you wanted to show me Morocco Bound, if you're in London.
Cute shout out.
London Bridge area.
Yes.
But yeah, and then I think we kind of just were like we knew nothing, and we were like, well, why not? We'll check it out, and then we got your book, and
Thank you.
We
Here
both
we are.
read the book and loved it.
Amazing.
Yeah. So now we have so many questions about you and the writing process and that kind of thing. So to kind of kick it off, we like to kind of start with your origin story all the way back.
Yeah.
So yeah, you grew up in South London.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Woolwich, yeah.
Very cool. And what was that like growing up? What was your kind of experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had a great childhood, very community focused. I think my parents were very intentional in my sister and I kind of being in like black spaces. So I went to a predominantly, it was like a pan-Caribbean nursery called the Simba Project, and I have a lot of memories of like reading books by black authors, having like my hair braided by like the women there. Went to school in the area, so I went to like a really like diverse multicultural primary school and secondary school. And so I think my friendship groups have always kind of been diverse, not just in terms of race, but like religion as well. So I think growing up I was exposed to like a lot of different ways of doing things in terms of like life. I live in a really green area, so I think I've spent a lot of my childhood like going to the park, going to the woods, learning how to ride a bike, that kind of thing, very like outdoorsy.
That is one thing I love about South London is that, I mean, for us moving to a big city, we were so worried about the green spaces, but there's so many parks and like lots of just really wonderful spaces. So that's such a good way. And for you, I think that's like an amazing experience to be able to like grow up with such a community focused environment. And that's
absolutely.
so cool. And then kind of one of the other things that we like to ask, especially because for both of us, art was very much a part of our lives growing up, but it wasn't ever necessarily something that was encouraged as a career. And so now you as a writer, I mean, growing up, what was that kind of attitude like?
Yeah, so both my parents are academics, so they're the university lecturers.
Very cool.
And so I think reading and writing has always been a really big part of my life. I was reading from a young age, writing from a young age. My parents always encouraged us to read. So in my family house, there were literally like thousands of books.
So cool. I love that.
It's actually insane. And so that was always the context. I think a lot of people ask me, oh, like, did you always want to be a writer? And I think it would be disingenuous for me to say yes, but looking back, it makes sense that I've kind of taken this path. But it's not something where I think just for a lot of people, I mean, it's definitely changed now, but I think being a creative when I was in school wasn't something that was encouraged. It wasn't seen as a career path that you could choose. I remember in like year 10, we had to do a project on careers, and I think I chose like a pediatrician. Other people chose lawyers, doctors, engineers. Like there wasn't a writer as part of that. I think it's more something that I saw as attainable in my mid-20s. Yeah, but that wasn't my experience growing up.
Yeah. I think that's something that you've definitely talked about a little bit with that too, is that it's kind of looked at as a hobby, right?
Yeah,
well,
exactly,
like we've mentioned that a few times, like in the past few episodes, just this idea, like where we come from in kind of the western part of Canada, like it's very like working class, blue collar kind of thing, and which is good. Like there's nothing there, I'm not feeling negatively about that, but the notion of arts in general, not any one art, but all of them, is sort of like, you know, you make your money for the week, and then you have a nice, you know, a 7 p.m. class that you go to and do pottery or something like that.
But your mom is an amazing.
And I'm thinking of my mother, who's she's a lovely, she's a wonderful potter. But yeah, like, so no shade to the Western Canadian mindset, but like, I feel the same, like in high school, not like, just not having the arts taken as a career path. Now, okay, so what I'm wondering is your parents, what area were they in? Were they in the humanities or the?
Yeah, so my dad teaches theology.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
like ministerial theology and theology, and my mom teaches arts management.
Okay. So cool.
Yeah.
Wow. That would be such an interesting perspective to learn from, I feel like, because they are so, I mean, obviously very experts in that kind of area.
Yeah, so I don't know, it's like I think my dad had always wanted so I've got 4 sisters.
Oh, wow.
He wanted one of us to like do a PhD by the time we were 25, and that ship has sailed for every single one of us. I think I probably did. There was a period of time where like I considered going into academia, but it wasn't really for me. But I think the idea of being a writer is something that didn't come from my parents. It was more through experience and me just like taking a chance on myself. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So when did you start writing your book?
Yeah, so I think I have always loved writing. I've always loved creative writing. I loved English in school, but I didn't study it at university or anything like that. And it was in 2019, I went to my local library to hear Bernardine Evaristo speak about Girl, Woman, Other. And I was just really inspired by what she shared about her journey, her process, and it reminded me how much I'd loved writing. But I hadn't really had a chance to develop it or like delve into it, make space for it, because I had just finished a master's degree, and like I didn't have time to like even read fiction really, let alone write. And so I think hearing her speak, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is actually something that I really do enjoy. And we spoke afterwards, and I think I had a question around like what you can do to develop your craft, and she spoke about the importance of doing courses but also reading fiction. And I signed up to a 1-month masterclass that she's running for young people in the borough on monologues. And I remember in that first session I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the thing that makes sense. Like I don't know, I need to really think about, I want to write about that feeling that I had, but I just it felt like writing was the one thing that made sense for me.
Wow.
And so ever since then I kind of had this goal of one day becoming a published author. That wasn't necessarily like leaving my 9-to-5 and writing full time, but I wanted to like one day like write a book. And so that's kind of how the journey started. So that was only like 6 years ago actually.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
2019.
Yeah. That's such an amazing progression. I mean, 6 years and I mean, now you have a published book that has been out for a year now, right?
Yeah, next month. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The paperback just came out last week. Yeah.
Okay.
That's so cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So then so I guess the publishing process is so interesting to me. So when did you finish the book?
Yeah, so I guess I started the book I had the idea for the book in the pandemic. So I wrote like would have been, it wasn't the first story, but one of the stories I wrote in, I think it was like April 2020, so in the midst of pandemic life. And I finished it in September 2022.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, and then my agent submitted it to editors at publishers, and I got a book deal in November 2022.
Wow.
And then the book came out in June 2024.
That's amazing.
So like the thing that strikes me about that is like that's such a short timeline.
Yeah.
So you went from 2019 having this inspiration moment, right, to very like in short order getting a published piece of work, and now having a second edition coming out in paperback. What like I would love to hear about like the motivation and kind of what or like how was it, like would you say it was like just a fire was burning that you needed to just like work and work and work, or was there more like how intentional was it? How taken were you by the muse versus how diligently intentional you need to be to get that done?
So I think and I don't really know why this is, but I've always been like a really disciplined person. And so I think the pandemic obviously was like a really terrible time for so many people, but I felt like it gave me more space to write. So prior to the pandemic, I used to get into work for 8 and leave at 4. Like where I worked is like very flexible, like you could kind of change up your hours. But then in the pandemic, I changed my hours to start working at 10. So I got into this habit of waking up at 5, kind of having a time of like prayer, meditation, reading my Bible, and then reading for half an hour fiction, and then reading half an hour non-fiction, and then writing for 2 hours. And I literally just did that for like 2 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. And that does take a lot of discipline to wake up in the morning
Yeah.
at 5 to
I
read,
remember
you
like
know?
my nephew, because I think if you're going to wake up at 5,
Yeah.
well, I need sleep. So I would be in bed for like 9 to be sleeping for 10. And so I was very strict on that.
And
I remember,
sometimes it's still light out at 9. Like,
and I remember my nephew was actually, he's like, Auntie, why do you have a bedtime? You're an adult.
oh, that's so cute. Oh my gosh.
He was like, you, because I was like, well, like, Joss, I want to wake up to write. And he was like, no, but you can like write till midnight or whatever. And I was like, I know I'm most creative. I'm my best self in the morning. And so I listened to, there's a motivational speaker called Eric Thomas. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. His nickname is the hip hop preacher.
Okay.
And I listened to like a lot of his videos like consistently.
That's so cool.
And one of the things he talks about is like honoring your craft and like being very protective of that. And I think I felt that way towards my writing. It's something that I really cared about. It's something that brought me a lot of joy. It's something I felt like I was good at and had a talent for, and I really wanted to develop it, so I made the time for it.
That's amazing.
And I think a lot of people like the idea of being a writer and being published, but people don't really talk about the amount of hours that go into that and like the sacrifice around that, and like saying no to certain things so I could wake up at that time, like not like leaving, I don't know, like birthday parties and family stuff early so I can get to bed to write. Like that is everything that has gone into getting to where I am today. So yeah, it's a lot of sacrifice. It's like a lot of sacrifice, but I think just turning up every day. I try to write 5 to 6 days in a week. I always take Sundays as like Sabbath rest. I'm very like clear on that, because I think there's a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a Christian spiritual book, and it basically talks about when you don't take time for rest, like you're going against the grains of the universe. And so I think when I was at university in my undergrad, one of my friends, Elliot, introduced me to a Christian author called Tim Keller. And just the importance of taking rest. And it's I've been doing that now for like, when did I start university? A long time, 13 years, I think.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that is so important, that rest element, because if you don't have your rest, then you can't show up as your best self. And I mean, I like to take Sundays as well, just to I typically go for a swim on Sundays. That's my Sunday swim. Just because it's like I know that I'm going to be very present with myself, and then I'll go and pick up groceries, and then I'll come home, make sure that the house is kind of a little bit tidy, and then we spend time together. And then
balance.
Balance. And so then because of that, I typically don't make plans on Sunday. Like sometimes I'll make exceptions to that, but you
know, it's interesting. What that has me thinking about is like, because I can't say like, because I like to think of myself as a writer. I'm not published, but
you're still a writer.
I think I brought this up last time. I don't know who said this. It may have been said by multiple people, but the thing that defines someone who's a writer is someone who writes. Or something.
I think I actually say that in my book.
I
think I say that.
Okay, so then maybe I was. I love that.
It's a great adage, and it seems timeless. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now, what was I saying? Oh, right. So when I do my kind of creative endeavors or whatever, I tend to be quite sporadic with it. But what I find is that once you get going, it's you go and go and go. But it's interesting to think about this idea of rest, because the amount of times that, you know, I do my best work at night, typically, or in the evening, but I'll come into bed to like, let's say midnight or something, and I'll be laying there kind of restless and whatnot, and Alayna will say, well, like, go to sleep or whatever. Like, well, I have these ideas and I want to keep going and going and going and going. But I've actually found that because I tend to do it all in a sprint, you know what I mean? And then the next day or the next few days, there's no drive left to continue with that piece, because I've latched on to that. inspiration in a way,
Yeah.
and kind of like exhausted it. You know, do you find that ever like?
I think there are definitely moments where I'm like more inspired. So you mentioned like nighttime. There have been multiple occasions where it's like I have an idea and I can't sleep and I have to like lean into it, and it's
Yeah.
so annoying because I'm trying to wake up early.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But I've learned that moments like that are rare, so it's important just to like lean into it. So that does happen, but I think even so, I try to write every day. So I don't know if you guys have heard of morning pages.
That sounds familiar.
So it was spearheaded by an author called Julia Cameron.
Okay.
She wrote a book called The Artist's Way.
I think I've heard
That
of
sounds
that.
familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so morning pages is the idea that you do three pages of like longhand stream of consciousness every day, to creatively unblock you, but also just to kind of keep the habit of writing. So I do it slightly differently, and it's changed over the years. So there was a period of time where I'd do morning pages for half an hour and I'd type it, but now it's more like 10 minutes, and I feel like that's kind of enough to just get everything out so I can like focus on my writing projects. But I do that every day. But also I remember reading somewhere that there's no such thing as writer's block, that like out of bad writing will come good writing. And so I just try to just write something every day, even if I'm not happy with it.
Yeah.
Because there will be periods of time where I'm like on that roll and like I'm motivated, but most of the time it's not going to be like that. It's just you have to turn up every day, and just consistency is more powerful than motivation, I think. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we talked about this as we were setting up, but that idea of like that progress over perfection kind of thing, right? And I feel like if you're writing all the time, or I shouldn't say all the time, but very intentionally every day, then you're able to kind of write a lot, but then take out the parts that are great, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's really important, is that it's not about like writing for quantity, it's about writing for practice and that kind of thing,
absolutely.
right? Because I think it is a skill that you need to continue to hone, right?
Yeah, and you can develop it as well.
Yeah.
So I think when I look back at some of the things I've had written in 2020, like it makes you cringe. I'm like, this is like,
Yeah.
but I think that's you're supposed to do that. Like that shows growth.
Yeah.
I think so a lot of authors kind of look back at their first pieces of like their first books, even they're like, oh, this is like terrible. But it's part of the process, part of the journey.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so in university, you did your degree in African studies.
Yeah.
And so how has that kind of helped shape your writer's journey now?
Yeah.
What is that kind of process
So
been?
I did a master's in African studies. It was a very intense program. So I did the MSc at Oxford, so it was 9 months as opposed to a year. So it
That's
was, like,
quick. Oh my gosh.
That's plus research plus doing your dissertation.
Oh my
And
gosh.
is there classwork as well?
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
goodness.
Because Theo did his in the
I
year.
did mine in a year, and I thought that
Okay,
was
yeah. So it's like, did you have a dissertation to write?
Yeah.
Did you have the summer to write it? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't have that.
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
So I went to Ghana to do my research for 6 weeks, and then I came back and had like a month to write my dissertation, which is actually
Wow.
insane.
Yeah.
wow.
And then we had like 2 weeks to revise for exams.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I think doing that, and also I did the so I didn't do A levels. Do you have A levels in Canada? What's the
No.
But I tutor here. I tutor English, so I do know how the system works more or less. Yeah.
So I did this thing called the International Baccalaureate.
Okay, yeah.
So you basically do 6 subjects. You have to do English, maths, a science, and a language. And then there's a core component called there's a core component where there's a thing called theory of knowledge, which is basically like critical thinking. You have to write an essay for that.
Okay.
And then a 4,000 word essay. And then 150 hours of creativity, action, and service. It's similar to like the Duke of Edinburgh Award, if you guys have heard of that.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it was very intense, but I think through that I learned how to juggle multiple things at the same time. So where a lot of my friends were just doing 3 A levels, I was basically doing 3 A levels plus 3 other subjects plus theory of knowledge plus this essay plus CAS. So I think because of that, going to university for my undergrad, I found it like not a massive jump because I'd been used to doing all of that. So it was like I found the first year like pretty easy. So I think all of that has contributed towards me, I guess, like having this discipline. And I remember one of my mentors said to me that I'm talented, but I have like the project management like discipline part, which means that it's really like beneficial to actually making progress and getting work out there. So I think it helped. I guess in terms of African studies in particular, I was really interested in like diaspora study. So my dissertation was looking at second generation British Ghanaians who had moved to Ghana, and their kind of issues around like home and belonging identity, which kind of filters into a lot of my writing, but just generally the things I kind of create, things I care about.
Yeah, I was thinking there's your story, Ghana in December.
Yeah.
That's kind of reminiscent.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that story because it does talk about mental health so much, and also, masculinity and what that looks like. And then also, aside from that, what home means and that kind of thing. And I feel like that in your writing, I mean, you paint such great pictures of what emotions are. And I think that that's one of the really, like, the strengths of the book. And one of the things that made it so kind of easy to read and something that you wanted to keep reading. But I think that, like, did your experience in school kind of, and your experience going to Ghana for 6 weeks, did that help shape some of that story too?
So in my undergrad, I actually did a semester in Ghana, so I was there for 6 months.
Oh, wow, that's so cool.
I did that in 2014, and then I went back to Ghana like 2 years later to do the master's research. So Ghana in December, I think that more came from a place of me wanting to write specifically about Black male friendship and mental health. So I think I started writing that story in 2020, so it had been a while since I'd been to Ghana, so I had to do like a lot of research in terms of speaking to my friends just to kind of check for authenticity. So as much as, yes, I have like this strong connection to Ghana, and I honestly, it's one of my favourite places in the world, I love it. I don't really think it was inspired by my time there. It more came from, so I think in Black British millennial culture, there's a lot of African and Caribbean people, particularly West African people, they will go home for Christmas. And we have like a lot more like money now than our parents did, our grandparents did. So there's this idea of like going to Ghana, going to Nigeria, and like you having a fun time for Christmas. Like it's called Dirty December. And
a friend of ours was telling us about this. She's like, you guys have to come one year. It'll be so much fun.
So I really wanted to like tap into that element of Black British culture and write about it. But I remember when I had the idea, I didn't really know what the story would be. I just knew I wanted it to be about, two like best friends, enjoying themselves in Ghana. But I like all of the other stuff around mental health and like home and identity, it kind of came through the writing process. And I guess I was drawing on experiences or things I care about, so home, identity, belonging, but that wasn't the driving force of that story, I would say.
Because like we're from North America, right? And so our kind of especially I've done a lot of like studying about African American literature. There's not as like established of a scene for Black Canadian literature. Not that it doesn't exist, of course it exists, but my kind of, and I would say, like, I don't want to speak for you, but our kind of understanding of like post-African, is that a way of putting it, post-African literature being the African American experience. I'm really interested in learning more about like what the differences are with like the Black British experience versus because obviously there's still like the marginality of things is still present, but not in the same way
Yeah.
as the African American experience. But yeah, like that seems to come up in the book quite a bit. But yeah, can you educate me slightly
Yeah.
or somewhat?
So I think there are definitely like commonalities between like I can't even say the African American experience because I feel like there's experiences. Like there's
Yes.
no
Sure.
one
Yeah.
homogenous
Yeah,
For
Like-
sure. Yeah.
Black experience, and I think that's also something I wanted to show through the book. Like it's an experience of Black British millennials, which
Right.
is not homogenous of everybody. So I think a lot of like a lot of the characters in my book are inspired by people in my life or like my friends, for example. And so a lot of my characters are like probably, I don't know, like in the top 10% of earners in the UK, for example. Like they're young professionals, and I really wanted to like show those narratives as well. So I think sometimes, particularly on screen, the narratives that we see of like Black British London can often be like rooted in like gang culture and that kind of thing. And I wanted to like show alternative narratives to that because that's my reality. Like those realities exist as well, but that's not the only Black British experience. So I kind of wanted to, you know, show characters who are investment bankers and like have second homes and you know have disposable income to go to Ghana or go to Nigeria at Christmas, people that are lawyers and are like trying to make partner. I really felt it was important to show those narratives because they exist and they're important, and it's important that people see themselves represented in stories.
yeah.
I love that, and I think you're right about that too, because a lot of the media that we see that becomes very popularized really focuses on the experience of Black people, especially in very like low income scenarios, which of course exists, but that doesn't mean that that's the only reality, like you mentioned. And I think that that's so important because it does like actually open the door to understanding that, like, I mean, people have like all sorts of different lives. It's not just one reality for the Black British experience and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
This reminds me of you know, it's a book. I don't remember the title of the book, but the film American Fiction.
Erasure.
Erasure
Yeah.
is the book.
We watched it actually.
This like ties in with a lot of stuff that we're talking about, and I want to see if I can like neatly do
Have
it.
you seen the movie?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
I'm not a big movie watcher. I actually truly don't like watching movies.
Oh, really?
I'm so sorry, everyone.
Sorry.
But I really enjoyed it, actually.
so like, Thelonious Monk is the character.
Yeah.
He's an academic, right? And he's interested, like his character, I mean, he's obviously a fictional character, but his character is interested in representing the non-ghettoized side, like the non-ghettoized Black voices of the United States. But then there's kind of that tension between like, or like the question of authenticity. Anyway, it's been a while since I watched it.
Well, he writes those like massive like novels and stuff that are really, really perfectly written and like these experiences, and then like his publisher is like, this isn't gonna work.
Yeah. So this is what I was interested in, I think, or one of the many things, is when it comes to like, for your writing and you have like a very like rich experience in the academic sort of world and that, how, like, do you think of your writing and this piece in particular in terms of its like academic reception, or in terms of its reception from like what audience are you hoping? Do you have an audience you're hoping to reach, or do you think about those?
That's actually a really interesting question. So I think when I wrote this book, I was like, I want to write a book that my friends can relate to and can see themselves in. And so a lot of my friends are Black British millennials. A lot of the story has like references to not just South London but Woolwich specifically, and I'd never like seen that before, and I think it's important to showcase, you know, other areas which people are actually from. So I think that was probably my target audience, but I think the book being out in the world has shown me that it's gone way beyond that, and it doesn't just apply to that demographic of people, because you mentioned like emotion. the book speaks to a number of human emotions that anyone can relate to. So yes, my target audience might have been, I don't know, like a 27-year-old black girl from London or black woman from London, but I don't know, I remember there was somebody who, like, it was an older white woman in her like 60s who reached out to me on Instagram and said she loved my book and she felt like seen as well. So I was like, that's incredible. And I guess that wasn't my intention, but I think black authors don't just write books for black people or black readers. They're for everybody.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, I think that's been like really encouraging to see. But I think it shows that when you write your truth and you're being like your authentic self, and you're writing what you know as well. Because I think, for example, like Sally Rooney, her books are, to be fair, I actually need to read her work. There's always so much I need to read, but I think her her context is very like specific. So like university grads or university students in Dublin, it's very specific, I think. But that's her thing, and she does it well, and she's like been amazingly successful because of it. And so I think there is value in maybe like not trying to appeal to everybody and having a particular demographic in mind, but then it going beyond that.
For sure. I mean, my career is in marketing, and the biggest thing, and I tell clients this all the time, and I tell like anybody who kind of challenges this, but if you're targeting everybody, you're targeting no one. No one will care. Because if you're trying to reach every single person, you're not actually saying anything. You're not actually, hitting any messaging. But if you target a group and then it bleeds out, then that's perfect. That's great. That's what you're looking for. Because really, I mean, you can write something and be like, okay, so does this check every single box of like, okay, people, whatever. It just isn't going to really do anything, But I think, like very much like I related to a lot of the emotions with it and that kind of thing. I mean, a 27-year-old white woman from Canada, and so that was definitely, and you have read it as well. And also, and I think the other part of it too that is a big focus is a lot of the relationships as well, right? And it's, I think, that was huge. I have my grandpa passed away, but I had an amazing relationship with him. I was so close with him. So Reggie, and that story was also very like moving and that kind of thing. And I feel like that's something that in a way is a reminder of like we're all united in some ways. That's so cool.
So true.
Oh, sorry. You looked at me when it was time for me to talk. And I'm like mid thought.
Oh yes.
What was I gonna say?
Theo's very good at asking very deep questions.
I take a lot of you can see the loading screen. Like the progress bar is still loading. That's But one thing that I don't want to talk about myself a lot, but it's very great to chat with you, because you're an accomplished writer, and I'm interested in writing myself. So, I coming from the background, having a master's in English and that, I tend to compare what I've written to the things that are out there, and inevitably that always results in this this whatever I've done here is just sheerly, it's either totally worthless or it's just a crude copy of that thing I'm trying to emulate in this writer over here.
So we're working on his mindset.
Yeah. So does that how do you relate to that position? Is that something that comes up for you ever, or?
Well, first of all, I think you have to remember that what you see, so my book as you see it has gone through so many iterations of drafts. So the version that my agent sent out to publishers to get a book deal, the essence is still there, but it is a much more polished version because it's been through 3 rounds of edits from my editor, who's a professional, and then also a copy editor. So I don't think it's fair to compare what you're working on to something that you see in a shop, because it's it's not the final stage. Okay. And I think that author-editor relationship is an important one.
Yeah.
But then also, I think one of the things that it's really annoying actually. when you're pitching a book or when your agent's pitching a book, they often use comps. So they're like, it might be like, I don't know, Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams meets, I don't know, like,
Okay.
I'm not sure, Honey and Spice
Yeah,
by
yeah.
Polly Babalala.
Yeah.
And I kind of, the books that my book was compared to, they're by black authors and I guess they're contemporary, but I didn't really feel like it was the same. Like, I felt like there wasn't really a book that was like my book on the market. So the comps were, it's a short story collection, so Bolly Babalola's Love in Colour was used, but what Bolly has done with that book, it's like using retelling of mythical stories, which is different.
Very different. Yeah.
Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams is very contemporary, female lead, but again the context is different. Caleb Azuma Nelson's Open Water, it's a Black British like love story, but there wasn't really anything that was like a like for like kind of thing, because everyone's pieces of work is different. So I think I kind of struggled with that. But then what people have said to me now is that my book is like has been a good comp for them. For
That's
their
so
work.
cool.
Yeah. And I think also just because of the pandemic element, I think there wasn't really anything that existed like that.
Yeah.
And I think in the process of writing this book, I got a lot of feedback from people in the publishing space saying that readers won't want to read stories that are set in the pandemic because
Really?
yeah, because it was a really terrible time and like no one's trying to like read about that, which I thought was crazy because I'm like, we all went through it. It's like the one thing that we have literally everyone has been through together.
I also think about like the hundreds of, probably thousands at this point, like books about like World War II time period.
That is
that kind of
always
thing.
my argument.
Yeah, I'm like, I mean, you're watching a war documentary right now.
Yeah.
That was
and
a
continue,
horrible time.
continue to be written about
for sure.
The World War II. So I just thought it was like really lazy, and it's really interesting because Chimamanda Adichie, her new book has come out like a few months ago, Dreamcatcher, and it's literally about I think 4 women, Nigerian women in the pandemic.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm not Chimamanda Adichie.
I'm gonna have to pick that up.
Yeah.
She's brilliant.
Yeah, she.
But yeah, I think that's such an interesting point, because I do think that, I mean, I'm typically very inspired by the way that art kind of forms. And so I find when I'm the most creative, it's either after something insane or during something insane.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's kind of the way that my life has gone. I mean, when I was working at a restaurant when we first moved here, it was a Michelin star restaurant, and so it was a very high pressure environment and that kind of thing. And I was doing a lot of journaling, kind of that daily journaling thing. And that was what kept me sane, is I said to myself, it doesn't matter if I write one sentence or 10 pages, I need to write every day. And that's what kept me extremely grounded. And also, I mean, I look back and I read some of the stories about that, and the emotions are so present and raw and that kind of thing. And if I did ever want to turn that into something, I'm sure that I could, you know? But I feel like the pandemic not being something that people are able to kind of write about is missing a huge part of the human experience of today.
Yeah, I just think that, like, it's something that, like, if you look, like, the world's changed, and there are examples of clear, you know, difference because of the pandemic. But I feel like it's the fact that happened, and the fact that we're not still just, like, constantly, like, weekly being like, can you believe there was a global pandemic for like 3 years? Like, can you believe it? Like,
and we went like, sometimes I just think about it, was crazy. Couldn't leave your house. Like, we had
for months,
like an hour of exercise, and I remember I was out. I remember going on a walk because where I live, and I really appreciate that actually, living at home in the pandemic, because where I live there's so many green spaces. But I remember there was one day where it was a really nice day, so like loads of people were out and everyone had masks on, and you kind of like, we're in like a tight, like turning into a road, and there's like a tight space, and you're kind of like, you don't both want to be there at the same time because like you could be contagious, and it's just such a weird, a weird thing.
It's bizarre. It's like
like I remember there was also another time where I went to visit my sister, but like from a social distance kind of distance.
Yeah.
Social distance. And my nephew, who was like 4 at the time, he like ran out to give me a hug, and we were like, no, Nate, you can't do that. And it's like, it was just so unnatural. What we went through.
Well, I mean, that was actually, I mean, I mentioned earlier I was supposed to study abroad in 2020, so I had moved back home as well to save some money for that. And I mean, honestly, timing wise, that was the best time I could have possibly moved back home. I have 3 sisters, so I got to like live with all 3 of my sisters, and we got to spend a lot of time together, which was great. And I was lucky enough to keep my job and still work and that kind of thing. But I mean, like I think about, I would go for walks for like 3-hour walks because you can't see anyone. And I was like, what am I supposed to do after work, right? Like, and I was, I don't know. I just think about how crazy that was. Or we would go to parking lots. I mean, we didn't know each other yet, but we would go to parking lots and like park like 6 or 7 feet away and like yell at each other through the windows. Like, it's so crazy. Weird.
There's thinking of things that have been published regarding the pandemic. If you're looking for some rather like intellectually like acrobatic kind of reading, I left this in Canada unfortunately, but there's Judith Butler. I think it's Judith Butler.
Oh yeah, I read her work in uni.
Did you? Yeah, so she put out like very briefly after the pandemic had like it wasn't even like settled down yet. It's called Pandemic Phenomenology or something, or Phenomenology of COVID or something like that. It's not very big, but it's I picked it up and I was reading it, and it's very much a reflection on the conscious, like the symbolic shifts that occurred. Like, so for example, like the symbol of a face mask being something that was at one time reserved for like hospitals and like, you know, sort of like dentists wear face masks, to everyone having these symbols of, you know, and like how the symbols shift. Yeah, there's like, anyway, she goes through and looks at these varieties of
interesting.
It's an interesting piece, and Judith Butler's brilliant, so, of course. More of the academic things, but
that's the thing. The only thing that at the time I was really frustrated about was when all of the TV shows that I really liked started to incorporate it into the plot if it didn't make sense in the plot. That was where I was like, maybe let's take a step back. But I feel like if a novel is going, or short story collection is going to incorporate it, and like that's the context of it that's different. But when Brooklyn Nine-Nine added it, I was not happy.
I think I only saw it in This Is Us.
That was the other one I was thinking about, because that was brutal. Like they changed the plot basically.
I remember. I think I remember liking it. I can't really remember what the nature of it. But I think I appreciated seeing that, because I'm like, oh well, I'm like at home as well. Like.
It's relatable.
Maybe I was just bitter.
It's fine.
But no, I think that's But so then now, now that we're kind of post-pandemic in a way, how has the reception been on that?
Yeah.
Like in terms of the way people talk about it with you.
So I think the way that I've written is like the pandemic is a backdrop. So there's some stories where it's more crucial to the plot than others, and that's actually something that kind of came through with the editorial notes from my editor. But people have really liked it. People have said they've appreciated the pandemic elements. So that there's some things that they had forgotten about, like clapping for the NHS on a Thursday, for example. And I don't know if you guys had this in Canada, but children would like draw rainbows and like post them in like the front windows of their houses, and you'd be walking out and you'll see like rainbows painted in chalk, drawn in chalk on the floor and things like that. And it's like those types of nuances that I've kind of mentioned that people have forgotten about. So I think people have appreciated it. No one has said to me, oh, I didn't like it because of the pandemic. But I think sometimes the publishing industry can be quite risk averse. But I'm really glad that I stuck to that vision, because I think I remember I had one particular conversation with an editor, and she said to me, can you like rewrite it without the pandemic? And I was like, that doesn't work.
Task.
It doesn't work. It just literally doesn't work.
So that was another question that I had, was working with an editor, because I find, and this could be just because I'm I like to say that I'm open to criticism, but how did you find kind of working through those edits and that kind of thing? Was it hard to disconnect a little bit from your work, or what did that look like?
Can I also just add, because I wanted to bring up the exact same point.
Yeah.
And like from the working with an editor, dealing with criticism, dealing with that, and like going into the publishing industry for the first time. Like, you know, you have this work, it's your first piece that you want to get done, and you bring it forward. And what was that like? Like, what was that kind of?
So I think for me, my agent is quite an editorial agent. So I signed with her in January of 2022, and for about 8 months we worked together to ensure the manuscript was in the best position to submit to publishers. So I think I kind of got that editorial experience through my agent. And I remember I got some advice from a mentor saying, like, you want an agent who's like that. Because I think there's some agents who they want you, like, your book to be pretty much perfect and then they submit it. But there's others who kind of want to work with you to kind of, they see something in it, they see potential, and they want to work with you to ensure that it's in the best position. So when I signed with Sean, my agent, the manuscript wasn't finished. I think I still had about 5 more stories to write, I think. But I think with my editor, Juliet, I think sometimes people have a view of like an editor just taking a red pen and just being like, no. But I think it was a very like collaborative process. So she sent me a very detailed document of things she thought could improve the story and things to think about. But she always said to me that you're the author, you need to do what feels right. And so I think I've just through this process, I've learned that feedback is, there's not all feedback you need to take on board. But I think once I had time to sit with some of the things that she said, it made sense. So I think just because of that, just I guess the trauma of being told people don't want to read stories about the pandemic. I remember there was a comment around for some of the stories making the pandemic not the centre of the story. So for example, the story Love in Crisis, the first iteration of that, Love in Crisis? Yeah. They meet on a dating app in lockdown because they're in lockdown. But dating apps are very common now. And so Juliet was basically saying that the lockdown doesn't need to be the reason that they connect on on the app.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think doing that and having less of a COVID focus allowed me to focus on the emotions of the stories and the characters. But I think initially when I saw that feedback, I was like, I'm not trying to hear it. But like I sat with it and I was like, actually, no, I see what you're saying. And I think the story is so much stronger now because of it. Similar with Blood and Ink. And these were things I brought to the story. Again, that story was set in, I think I actually had it just before we went into lockdown, like the day before, like Boris shut everything down. But again, looking at the story, I was like, it's not needed. And I made COVID more of a reflection. So in the story, Iffy, who has endometriosis, like has social anxiety, she's been in lockdown and she's loved it because it's given her like more breathing space and she can kind of be herself and all that kind of stuff. And so being back in a classroom with people, she found it really unsettling. So I think that was a piece of feedback that I guess I initially didn't agree with, but I was like, okay, that makes sense. Similar with the first story, The Commute. I don't want to like give spoilers, but there's something that happens in that story. So the character's on a train and like she sees a guy reading her favourite book. Before Juliet's notes, that wasn't in there. It was just like a commute, like nothing happened. It was just a character's commute. But Juliet was like, she feels that some readers, because it's the first story, she feels that some readers might feel that it needs more weight or it needs more depth to be the first story. Because I think from my perspective as a reader, I'm always like taken by like the first page. So again, I remember that idea came to me in the summer. I remember I was like working in Woolwich Works and I was like, oh my gosh, I could do this. And I thought about other ways to like link it to like the end as well. So yeah, I think the editorial process, in my experience, has been more collaborative, and it's like suggestions, and then it's up to me as the author to do what feels right, and not everything I will take on board, but there are some things that resonate. I think you had another question around how has it been like.
Yeah, just like coming to, what is that experience coming to the industry at large?
Yeah.
You know? Like how did you know where to start? You know, to start by getting an agent, then moving to the editor and the publisher and that.
So I also do think a lot of my progress was because of the pandemic. So everyone was like online. Like there were so many publishing chats. Clubhouse was like really big in the UK and America. I don't know if you guys like had a similar experience in Canada. It was like a audio based social media app.
Oh no,
I've never heard of it.
Okay. Yeah, so it's like there were rooms and people would be speaking.
Cool.
So like it was a really big, it was a big thing, but it was like so amazing for community. And there were quite a lot of publishing chats on Clubhouse that I went to. There was loads of Zooms. I did a lot of like creative writing courses online. So I think I was very immersed in that whilst I was like learning loads. And so I kind of learned about the process of, if you want to be traditionally published, you need an agent. And so I had a list of the agents I wanted to like submit to. I just like spoke to people. I think just, I was able to build like a real like bookish community on Twitter, or X now, and Instagram. And I think that really helped. And maybe I might not have had that if I was like doing my 9 to 5. I was still doing my 9 to 5, but going into the office and like not being online as much. Yeah.
And so how did you know, like, or how did you get the feeling that, like, you know, this, to go to the title of the podcast, right? Like, when did you know to do it? Like, when was it that you felt like this is the, you know, I'm going to send this to this agent?
Yeah. So my experience is like very unusual. And again, it's like social media, I think, has been like a big thing in my journey. So, prior to the pandemic, I would always just read. I would never read at home. I'd always read on my journey. So like on the bus, on the train, that's when I did the bulk of my reading. But then in lockdown, I didn't have that. So I had to create the time and space to read in the morning. And just to kind of keep myself accountable, I started posting like book reviews to my Instagram, just for myself. But then I started to like build a following of people. And then like publishers started sending me books to review.
Oh, wow.
That's cool. That's
awesome.
So I kind of became a book influencer, like unintentionally, and Bookstagram is like a whole thing, which I just never knew was a thing. And at the same time, I also, and I don't even know why I did this, and I think it's just like lockdown, we were just thinking of things to do, but I colour coordinated my bookshelf.
Amazing.
Cool.
And I really enjoyed that. And I had this display shelf of the books that inspire me. So Bernadine's Girl, Woman, Other was there, The Vanished and a Half by Britt Bennett, Homegoing by Yagi Yassi, Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson, and then also Love in Colour by Bolu Babalola, which is a short story collection. And I think one of the things I was hearing in all these different like publishing chats was like, publishers don't like to publish short stories. It's really difficult to get an agent if you're a short story writer. But I was like, it's amazing to see that Bolu has done that. And so I think I posted a picture of my bookshelf on Twitter and it went viral.
Amazing.
And a lot of people kept like atting Bolly and was like, oh, like Bolly, like look at your book. And I think she like quote tweeted it and I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Wow.
So I was just like, I think often when people's tweets blow up, they underneath like they promote stuff, and I was like, I think I said that I have nothing to promote at this point, but like when my book comes out, like you can get it. But I said that without an agent, that was just like wishful thinking kind of thing. So I thought, you know what, let me like slide into Bolly's DMs and just see what she says, because I think I just generally have this mantra in life of like, what's the worst that can happen? I always just go for stuff. And I was like to Bolly, like, I loved your short story collection. It was really inspiring to me that you got published as a short story writer. I'm going to be applying to agents over the next few months. It'd be great to get some advice from you. And I didn't think she would reply. She's got, you know, thousands of followers, and yeah, she's like really established online. But she got back to me.
Oh, cool.
That's amazing.
which was amazing. So a few months later, we had a Zoom call, and I think she could see like how focused I was and like determined. We had a few mutual friends as well, which I think helped. So I do screenwriting as well when I was on this mentoring program, and she like is really good friends with my mentor. So I think that helped. But she offered to introduce me to her agent just to kind of have a chat about the process. And so she set up an introduction email with her agent, Juliet. I feel like there's a lot of Juliets that work in publishing.
Yeah,
like I've got my editor's called Juliet. There was this Juliet.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, Juliet got back to me like super quickly and was like, I'd love to read some of your work. And I remember she read it in like a few days. And it's like, I really like your stories. I hope you don't mind, but I've sent it to my colleague Sean, who's a new agent. I think just like in full transparency, I think with our support, like she could be a really great agent to you. So I had a Zoom call with Juliet and Sean, and yeah, it was just like, it was amazing. I remember, I think I had it, so my granddad passed away and I was in Jamaica when all of this stuff was happening. So it was like, I think it just kind of showed how amazing things could be happening in life, but then it's also like really bad things happening in life as well.
Yes.
But I remember getting that email from Bolu, I think on the day of my granddad's funeral.
Oh my goodness.
And I think, yeah, Juliet got back to me the same day. So we had a Zoom call when I came back with Sean, and they really loved the collection. They said I was a really strong writer, but they also liked how I had other projects that weren't short stories. So I think with agents, for them, obviously, like their main thing is to advocate for you, but it's a business, right? So generally, novels sell better than novels. So short stories, novels sell better than short stories. And so it was good that they could see that I had other novel ideas in the pipeline, and they were basically ready to like sign me there and then, which is like very unusual and not what I was expecting. So you always hear stories of people submitting to agents and getting like loads of rejections. Like you hear this from some of like the most successful writers now. So I was kind of expecting all of that, and so it just kind of like threw me by surprise. I was like, oh okay. But there was one agent I really wanted to be my agent, and so I had this long list and I condensed it into a short list, and I was kind of like, I'm still in the process of looking for agents and I kind of will get back to you. And so I submitted to 3 agents, and they all seemed like really enthusiastic initially, and then they read it and I got like really nice rejections. I think one person said, you have a lot of potential, but structurally it needs a lot of work. I'm not quite ready. Another agent was like, short stories, it's not really for me, but I can introduce you to my colleague who can help you like turn it into a novel. And then another agent said, you're clearly very talented, but I just don't have the space for another client, kind of thing.
Okay.
And I was just like, oh, this is like the one agent I wanted. I was like, this is so sad. But yeah, so I signed with Sean, and I think she's probably surprised. I was surprised. But it's literally been such a perfect like relationship. She was never on my radar as someone I would have submitted to. But yeah, she's exactly what I would have wanted in an agent, and I feel like we've both kind of grown together. So I was her first client, and I think I remember some of the feedback advice I got from some of my writer friends was actually it's really good to have an agent who like you're their first client or like their only client, because they will pour everything into you. A lot of agents, they have a lot of clients and they kind of focus on their like bigger names and stuff. So I feel like she was very like present, very intentional, like had time for me. So yeah, that's how I got an agent, which is very like so unusual.
Cool. That's super interesting.
Yeah.
But that's that's kind of what we want we're interested in exploring is like these stories that don't get talked about as much. Like
I think what's really interesting is because everybody's process to whatever achievement is different, right? And that's one of the things that we're so interested in. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about is a couple of your other projects. So because you had become a kind of a book Instagram book influencer. But then you have done was this before or after you were published that you started hosting the sessions at the Orange Room?
Yeah, so that was afterwards.
Oh, afterwards. And then you also have the Naya project, right?
Yeah, so So yeah, I started with Naya first. So when I finished my masters, me and my best friend wanted to create a community for Black women to like meet each other, because I think sometimes, yeah, like you're not in university, you go into workplaces which are often very like not diverse, and it's difficult to kind of make friends. So Naya was created out of that kind of desire, and so we used to run brunches, and we had a book club, we did trips abroad, we had a mentoring program. But when I think, yeah, just different seasons in life, it's a lot to like run something like that.
Yes.
Yes. And so I think we just kind of I got to a stage just like I want to focus on my writing. And we all just had we just had different priorities. So we actually ended Naya in 2023, which I think is the same day. I can't remember what happened, but there was something that happened with my agent on that day, which kind of to me signaled like a shift.
Yeah.
But it's always like it's always going to be part of my journey, and I feel like
but still with that though too, I'm sure that that's something that, aside obviously from the talent of your book and your achievements and that kind of thing, I'm sure that publishers kind of would look at that too, of like, okay, so these are the different kind of communities that she's a part of. These are the different ways that this can be successful. Because if you are someone who isn't as kind of present, I feel like that might be something that's harder to market as well. That's something, I mean, from a marketing kind of perspective.
I mean,
right?
I feel like I was having this conversation with my friend the other day, because I think the way that publishing is going is like, there was a time where you could literally just be an author and just the talent alone was enough. But I think given TikTok, for example, like BookTok is such a crazy niche,
massive,
and it has literally influenced the publishing industry. So you walk into Waterstones and there's like TikTok sections, or like books that are popular on TikTok. And so I just feel like as an author, you're kind of missing a trick if you're not engaging with communities on TikTok. And so as much as I shouldn't have to do that, it's like you're missing out on, it's a really easy, it's not, I would say it's easy, it's not easy, because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of content. But I just feel being an author now is, because of social media, is completely different to how it used to be like 10 years ago, even maybe.
I could be completely wrong, but I heard that you have to have at least 50,000 followers across all of your platforms to have an interest in terms of publishers.
So I think non-fiction is different to fiction. Yeah, so I think often people that get non-fiction deals are like influencers in their own right, or a very like a voice of authority on a particular subject. So I actually wanted to like write a friendship book at some point, non-fiction, but I think it makes sense to do it later on in my career, where I'm like more established and I've got a bigger following, and I speak to certain themes of friendship in my book. I don't think that's the case now. Like I don't have 50,000 followers across my social.
I heard this and I like internalized this, and I was like, well,
but I do think things like that will have more of an impact now, though. So even like with the rise of just like AI, so I don't know if you heard recently, but like Meta used this piracy book website to train the AI model. So millions of authors' books have been put into this model. Including mine, which I was really surprised at, because I literally it's only just come out. And so yeah, I think the main issue is that we haven't been compensated for that. And I think being an author, like so much goes into that process. It's like so much like human experience, which I mean, the thing is, AI models, they're like improving every single day, but I do think there is something really special about like writing a book, and just the struggle, and just like the sweat, blood and tears that kind of go into that. Like I don't think ChatGPT could have written for such time as this. Like, I don't think it could have.
I'm also so interested in that kind of perspective. Actually, so I went to a networking event. I talked about this in the last episode, but I went to a networking event, and because I'm working on a writing project, and I was talking about it with someone, and they said, "Oh, well, are you using ChatGPT with it?" And I was like, "No." I was like, to me, I hadn't even, because I use it a lot for work, but I hadn't even thought about that as a potential for like something that people are doing for fiction. I was like, oh my gosh, my brain exploded in the worst way.
The thing is, I think the way I see it is like people are using it, and you don't want to get left behind, basically.
Yeah.
And I use it a lot as a writer. Like, I don't use it to write my work, but I use it more like as a research assistant type of thing. In terms of like my social media, like I use it to write captions and tailor captions, or like this is content, make a caption for Instagram, for TikTok, suggest hashtags. I use it. I do like a lot of corporate engagements as well, as like just pitching products based around my book. Like, it has been so helpful for me, and I think being an entrepreneur, it saves you so much time. But yeah, I think it is something that writers need to be mindful of, just in terms of how just the world is changing. And and kind of going back to my social media point, I think because the thing is often with writing a book, it's like, if you read a book and you love it, you're more likely to buy an author's future projects.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, readers are like the most important people in the ecosystem, because it's like free PR. So you like a book, you're going to recommend it to your friend. You might buy it for like people for Christmas gifts. Like it's such like they're so underrated. They're not underrated, but it's such an important part of the ecosystem. And so I think being on social media just helps to grow those communities. And I think with the rise of AI, with followings becoming more important, it makes sense as an author to be in those spaces and see it as like, the thing is, it's so difficult because it's like, I should just be able to focus on just the writing and just like you know, go on a writing retreat and just be in my zone and write, and not have to make like day in the life videos and all this kind of stuff. It all helps. It all helps.
I've always been really interested in the role of community and the role of collaboration in the arts. But how do you feel like that is as a writer? Like what is the place for that, and where how does community feed into the writing process?
Yeah, so I think writing is a solitary endeavor. I think I even said that. I think I said that in my dissertation, like acknowledgements or something like that. But I still think, despite that, you can find community. So throughout my journey, I've been part of like writing courses, and we've had like a cohort. So we've read each other's work. We would be online, like discussing ideas, like discussing like what makes good storytelling. And I think it is important. I think being a Black author in particular, like, I think structural racism is a thing, right? And it's like, it exists in publishing as well. And so I think having a community of people who you can speak to is really, really important. So I'm part of like the Black Writers Guild, which is a community of Black writers in the UK. But then just outside of that, like, I have personal like relationships with writers that I speak to on a regular basis. So Lizzie Damlola Blackburn, she wrote Yinka, Where's Your Husband? And The Rewrite came out a few months ago. So we speak all the time. Like, we're always like sending voice notes. And I think it's important to be in community with other writers, because it's a very unique thing that you're doing. Like, it's not easy. And I think just being an entrepreneur, just generally, like, it's just not an easy thing to do. And it's really hard. Particularly like living in London, where, you know, it's very expensive, and just cost of living, all these kind of things. So it's important to have people who get it as well, that you can speak to.
Oh, for sure. Well, and I think there's that level of accountability with that too, right? Because when things get really hard, right, as an independent kind of entrepreneur, it's important to be able to know that there is that sunshine on the other side of that hard time, and having people who are maybe in the sunshine, or they've gone through that or whatever, then it's a lot better to have community-wise, I guess.
Absolutely.
So the other thing that we do love to ask, and this is a very hard question, but what does success look like for you as a writer?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think I want to get to a place where I'm living the life I want to live, and being like writing being a sustainable income for me. And it's that's not the case for most people. I think the average advance in the UK, it might have changed slightly, but a couple of years ago it was £7,000, which is like not a lot of money at all.
No.
So most people won't be bestsellers. They won't sell millions of copies. Like, that's just the reality for most writers. most people can't do it full time. And I do other things outside of writing as well. So I'm not there yet, but I would like to get to a stage where like writing is my main like source of income, and I'm like comfortable and like living the life I want to live. I think I also want to continue to write stories that I would want to read, and stories that people feel they can see themselves in. So I have so many more stories like within me, and I think I want to be able to get to a position where I'm like, you know, people say like their dreams, like the graveyard is like the most rich of dreams. I don't know what the phrase is. Yeah.
Yeah, what is the
Do you know the phrase?
There's like the graveyard of dreams.
I can't remember what it is, but
Yeah,
I want to like get these like stories out of me, and so I'm like working on my novel at the moment, and obviously never written a novel before, but I'm like, I know I can do it, even though it feels really hard, and sometimes I'm like, can I even do this? What am I even doing? But I want to get to a stage where I'm like, okay, like this is something I've done, and so I've probably got about 6 other ideas.
Wow.
So I want to get to a stage where it's like I have produced all of those. You know, like when you read people's books, and then the front page is like also by this author. Like that'd be incredible.
That's so cool.
That would be incredible.
No, I think so. What you're talking about with other kind of projects going on, like I think it's important to normalize that idea of the artist, and like understand that's what most artists, probably the vast majority of artists of all types, are doing. Is they're doing their project, whatever it is, you know, they're a painter, they're a filmmaker, they're a writer, this and that, and then they're working at other places that are like conventional jobs or something like that. You know, and like that's fine. And like I don't know, I feel like I don't have a source for this, but I feel like I mean, the idea of the English major that I've basically kind of had to internalize my entire time is like, any humanities person, but like, what's the, you know, entry level job for someone with a master's in English? Well, it's a cashier at Tesco, you know, and like that, like really negative perception of like, first of all, like what's wrong with people who work at Tesco? Like there's they're fine people as well. But yeah, sure. Like you're a cashier at Tesco, but you're also like writing a poetry collection, or you're in a band on the side. And like the fact that you make money as this job, that's nothing to be ashamed of. Like there's like absolutely. Where does that idea come from that we should be ashamed of working these jobs in the world? You know
the
what
other
I mean?
thing about that too, and I mean, you write a lot of short stories and poetry and that kind of thing, and a lot of your inspiration comes from working. Okay, so this is like one of my favorite eras of Theo, but he worked for a summer at a metal scrapyard. So it was like a metal recycling plant. So like I would drive him there at like 7 a.m. or 8. He started at like 8 a.m. or whatever. And like all summer he worked at this place where when I would go, because I worked in marketing at the time as well, and I was the director of marketing for this tech company, and I would show up in my like nice outfit,
like in your like your blazer,
and like I looked,
your hair done nice, cute, and your nails, and
like I would bring him coffee, like after dropping him off.
This was a rugged job. I loved it, but I was working with at least 3 people who were like on probation, kind of thing. Like, and I didn't fit in at all, because here I was, this like little like working on my undergrad in English guy. I've like read books on my lunch break kind of thing, and these guys are like smoking cigarettes and like, you know, talking about the weekend, and like it was amazing.
Well, but the reason I bring this up is because his nickname was Thor, but then my nickname whenever I would come in was Princess. And so like all the time, but anyway, so he had so much inspiration during this period of time, but then he also worked at a law firm and got some inspiration there, and then worked at a restaurant. So it's just like inspiration can come from all of these different places.
And I think in my book, like the first story, is a character's commute. I wouldn't have written that if I wasn't going into work. The main story in the collection, For Such Time As This, like came directly from an experience I had in the workplace. Back to the office. Again, I had that idea of my lunch break when I went back to like the kind of the hybrid working stage of kind of going back to the office, but like not full time and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, a lot of my work is inspired by just me living life. And I think as an author, it's really important to do that.
Like to be close to the real lived experiences of other people. You know, because how else are you going to reflect that? How else are you going to produce something that's...
Well, Joan Didion, I think it was Joan Didion talked about this. I love Joan Didion. But she talked about how everyone in your life becomes kind of a character in a way. She talked about it in a little bit more of a negative context where it's like she feels like she's stealing and like kind of sucking things out from people and like, or making almost like not a parody, but like almost a caricature of the people in her life. But I kind of look at that a little bit more positively, that I'm like, that's cool that you're kind of memorializing or almost like creating this like real lived person in a book, you know? I don't know. I find that's cool, right?
Yeah. And I think in my collection, there are characters I've made up, but then there's also characters that are very much inspired by like myself or like people I know. So Reggie, the granddad story, like that was directly inspired by my granddad called Reggie. And I think he's passed away now. I think it's been 4 years. It'll be 4 years this year. But it's been amazing to see how many people have connected that story. So it's kind of like he still kind of lives on through words and his personality and the things that he cared about, which I think is a really beautiful thing. Like memorializing the past or like elements of things in your life. So I mentioned like my book club a book club, a Black women's book club in the book, which doesn't exist anymore, but it kind of lives on in the book. Even Naya, the main character, I changed the name, like the spelling slightly, but that's from my book club, the Naya Network. That's so cool. Because then you're taking, I mean, I feel like that's something that authors do so much, is like taking part of themselves and putting it in the book, even if it is fiction, right? I mean, I really think that fiction only can come from the ideas from around you, right? Yeah, absolutely. That's my idea.
However abstract that gets.
And it could get completely different. But I think that ideas just don't come from thin air.
Absolutely.
Things, right?
Absolutely.
So I didn't know. You're a screenwriter as well.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I'm like a baby screenwriter. I'm very new to it.
Cool. So is Theo.
So
So I'm on a development program with a production company. So I've got a mentor and I've written like a pilot.
So cool. Oh my gosh.
So television.
TV series.
That's amazing. Well, I can't wait for that. That's so exciting.
Yeah, that's super. So did you did you just say like I'm interested in screenwriting and want to go into it?
Again, it's another like crazy story. So I mentioned, and I think it just speaks to the importance of speaking to people about like the things you do outside of work. So I had a friend at work, and the thing is, we never actually met in person. Like we were pandemic friends. Like I think that's like it's such a weird time because there's so many people in my life that I've met through the screen.
Really?
So we were friends, and he also like did a lot of stuff outside of work in the kind of creative space. And I told him I was writing, and like I think I must have mentioned like one day I'd love to like write for screen, but I was thinking like, I don't know, 10 years down the line kind of thing. And one day he like messaged me and was like, a friend of mine is a mentor in a program and she's looking for a mentee, and I think you'll be like really good for it. And I was kind of like I've never written a script before, like I don't even know what a script looks like. Because like these opportunities, don't come around often. And so I had this chat with my now mentor, and she was like, your project sounds really cool, maybe we can do it the following year kind of thing. And so I think it just speaks to like saying yes to opportunities, and I think screenwriting has actually really helped to hone my fiction skills as well. So I think with TV writing, character arcs are really important and have an inciting moment, and knowing where the story is going. I think the way I write, and I think this is why I've struggled writing a novel, is because I don't really write from vibes. Like I just create the time to write. I don't really have a plan. Like I don't think any of the stories I've written in my collection I planned them out. I just wrote them, and the story just kind of comes to me. Whereas I think with screenwriting, you kind of can't really do that because you kind of need to know where you're going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's the interesting thing is because like screenwriting, and I've come from a lot more writing like fiction and poetry and that, and then was really interested in getting into screenwriting. And like you can't, when you do a script, you can't like tell anything that isn't like, it's all about showing what's happening.
Yeah.
So you can't be like someone like the character gasped and felt the inner, you know,
you have to,
like the pain of whatever. It's like, no, he grimaced and then like that's it, move on kind of thing.
So then that's on your list right now. A novel is on your list right now. Any other big, the other thing, you have a library named after you. That's so cool. So that's in Woolwich.
So there's a community space called Woolwich Front Room, and it came out of me. So I mentioned like I'm always getting sent books. Like my collection is too big, so I wanted to donate a lot of books, and so there's actually a Bernardine Evaristo library in Woolwich as well, but they didn't have enough space. And so they were like, we can open the Shani Akilah library.
That's so cool.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. So it's a really nice space. People can come in, borrow books. There isn't like much of a process, which makes it, because I think sometimes going to libraries, you kind of, I don't know how it works now, but I think you might need like an address, so it kind of like marginalizes like a lot of people and stuff. So yeah, it's a really nice space, and it's run by an organization called GCDA, which I think is Greenwich Cooperative Development Agency, and they run adult learning in Greenwich. So I also teach creative writing in the space as well. So I finished a few months ago a 6-week short story course, teaching short stories. And so I'm running it again in a few weeks' time.
That's so cool.
So yeah, I feel like I'm very like embedded in the community, and I had to celebrate the paperback. I had a sip and paint at Woolwich Front Room as well, which is really nice. So people were painting pictures inspired by the book cover, but also just like I had a creative prompts sheet, so themes around like joy and family, belonging to community. But I've also recently got a new hobby of colouring in. So cool. So it was like sip and paint and colour. And so if people didn't want to paint, they could also colour as well.
That's awesome.
So that was really fun, really wholesome.
Oh, I love that. So you have so many things on the go. It's amazing. And I mean, I follow your Instagram, and you're consistently doing book talks and that kind of thing as well. So
it's
you're
a lot
busy
of work.
gal. And so making time for that reading and writing, I'm sure is so important. Especially with a new project. What is that process like for you, waiting for things? Are you patient with that kind of thing? I'm a very impatient person, so I'm like, especially with your novel, you've been working on that, and I mean, even the short story collection, it came out very quickly, but still, I mean, a few months can feel like forever. So are you patient with that kind of thing? How do you wait?
I mean, I think with the publishing industry, like, it's so subjective. So I have gone through like a lot of rejection, and even now, so like going through it. So I've applied throughout these 5 years, 6 years, endless like short story competitions, and you know, not getting shortlisted, and even like now being an author, like your book is submitted to prizes, all those kind of things, like I haven't been chosen for any yet. But I think that's just part of it. You just have to kind of develop like thick skin and just keep going, and knowing that, I remember one of my mentors said to me that all you need is one yes. And I think that has been the case with me getting an agent, with me getting a publishing deal. Like I only just needed like one publisher to say yes. And so I think just having that like growth, resilient mindset is really helpful. But I guess in terms of my writing, just I think having deadlines does help me. So I often like impose deadlines on myself. So I think that does
I'm
help.
the same way. It's the like diamonds under pressure thing
Yeah.
for me, because otherwise I'm like, oh yeah, that. I mean, I said Friday, but like, 2 days isn't
Yeah.
really that different, and then it turns into never happening. So
Yeah,
I feel
exactly.
like, I mean, with this podcast, for example, for us putting an episode out every Thursday,
Yeah.
and me knowing that I have friends listening and hopefully more people, that's amazing, and I know that people are counting on that, so I'm going to put everything
the
out,
accountability is so important.
So important for me.
Yeah. So it's like I've got a deadline for this novel, and I've shared that deadline with my agent. I'm really trying to meet it. I'm really like challenging myself just to like do that, and I've kind of broken it down in terms of like a particular word count that I want to write each day, which is generally not how I work. I think I more prioritize the time spent. So yeah, like I often work in like half an hour blocks. So I'm in a process now of doing 2 hours writing between like 10 and like 12:30, and taking like breaks in between that. But I think just to kind of get this novel just out, I kind of need to set some word count goals, which is something I haven't really done before. Yeah.
So when we met, I had brought this up earlier. So we did buy your book that night, and so then you signed the book then, and I've been like showing it off to people.
Oh, amazing! You got the special embosser.
I know,
stamp
right?
as well.
Yeah. So you probably can't see it on the screen, but it's like a really cool little stamp. But yeah, I was like, this is so cool that we have this, and then now we actually have gotten to speak with you.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So
journey.
Yeah.
So we would love it if you would be able to read a bit of the book. We've got the paperback.
Yay!
The brand new paperback.
You can see them side by side.
Okay, well we can.
It's a little more.
The cameras are over here.
This is more of like you can fit it nicely in your bag.
But the hard copy is also stunning. So.
Yeah. I was thinking just the first
sure.
story, if you like that.
Yeah, I do that.
Yes,
I like that story.
Amazing.
Cool. So the first story is called Intro, The Commute. It is the first week back after the slowed indulgence between Christmas and New Year, forgetting what day it is. Movie marathons, vision board making, and impromptu gatherings of friends are no more. Instead, you're joining the stream of commuters at Woolwich Arsenal, lightly tapping your bank card on the Oyster reader, its coral hue standing out amidst the crowd. On the escalator, you do not stand, but walk briskly down the left-hand side, a stark contrast to the leisurely rhythms of the previous day. Arriving on the lower ground, the platform is packed, but after 3 years of making this journey, you know exactly where you need to stand to get a seat. The train is due in 3 minutes, so you open your bag and take out Children of Virtue and Vengeance, the January pick for the book club you co-run. Once on the carriage, you nestle into your preferred seat, ready to delve into the next chapter. But just before the doors close, you see a woman with a baby on board badge. The man sitting next to you with AirPods fixed in his ears pretends not to see her. The woman opposite has her eyes shut, a scarf wrapped around her face, a clear signal that her daily 27-minute power nap to bank is not to be interrupted. No one readily offers their seat. The holiday season of goodwill is a distant memory. You stand, picking up your book and your bag, and give up your seat with a smile. You then take hold of the pole opposite with one hand. No longer seated, you struggle to read as the driverless train jerks and twists along the meandering tracks of random stops through East London. You close your book, missing your usual 12 minutes of solace between your local station and Canning Town. Your eyes are taken in the outside views, dotted with dilapidated factories, when you spot a flash of orange and red on the far right of the carriage. The colours are overlaid with black and white, a tapestry of lines and curves. It is the front cover of your favourite book. The interwoven stories of two sisters and their descendants spanning multiple generations, each chapter part of the puzzle of connections past and present from the motherland to the diaspora. It is the book that made you fall in love with fiction again after years of only reading journal articles and textbooks at university. You are intrigued. Your favourite book is in the hands of a man. Most of your male friends seem only to read biographies and self-help books, but the man before you is more than halfway through the most beautiful novel you've ever read. You are overcome with a desire to speak to him. You consider telling him about your Black Women's Book Club and the next biannual session where you invite men to join the conversation. You think of his potential insights, of what he might say, of the contributions he could add to the meeting. But the train is packed. Maybe if you maneuver yourself closer to him, you could catch his eye, but he is immersed. Minutes go by and he doesn't look up once. There is a gradual slowing down of the train. The man begins to stand. You're also getting off at the next station and decide that if you are quick enough, you can walk beside him as he leaves the carriage. Your mind scans through some potential conversation starters about the book he's still holding. The doors open with a piercing shriek and then he takes a few steps forward. Just as you have decided what to say and have started edging towards the door, there is a tap on your shoulder. You turn around and see a woman point to a strip of kente cloth on the floor. Your newest bookmark has fallen out of your novel. You reach down to pick it up and say thank you, and then leave the train trying to find the man who is holding your favourite book. But he has disappeared, is nowhere to be seen. And I'll stop there.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah, I really love it. It's such an excellent. It just feels like it sets up the entire work so well, and it's a love story to a book and to writing and to here you are about to start this diving into this work of fiction, and then there's it's meta in a way.
No, it's so true.
Yeah, and it's also the other thing about it, and I remember I read it and then immediately texted Alayna, and I was like, the vivid and that's such an accurate description of just traveling on the underground. So many of those things, and the great thing about it was that it felt so relatable, and we're immigrants here, and having a native Londoner kind of write that experience, and I was like, I'm kind of a Londoner too.
You're part of this,
if that's because the bit on the escalator, the bit about the guy who doesn't give up his seat and he pretends to look down and it's so there's a particular word for this, but just when something's really on point.
The nuances of it. I really enjoy it. Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing. Sorry. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been such an amazing conversation.
Thank you. It's been great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been our pleasure.
So, everybody needs to check out your book.
Yes. For such a time as this.
Yes.
So,
Shani Akilah.
Yes.
We have listeners in North America where.
Yeah. So this is the annoying thing. I'm actually doing a book club with a Canadian book club in the summer.
So cool.
But I only have a UK book deal
Okay.
at the moment, and so technically it's not available.
Mm-hmm.
But people have messaged me.
I love it.
They've got it somehow. I think on Amazon, you can get it. You just have to pay for
an
delivery. So I'm really hoping for my next book that I get a 2-book deal for the novel and then this one for the States and for Canada as well.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
And then otherwise, if you're in the UK, it's Waterstones.
Yeah, Waterstones, independent. I do a lot of work with Bricks, Roundtable Books. So they're a Black and Brown owned independent bookshop in Brixton.
Mm-hmm.
They supply the books to all of my events. But yeah, Waterstones, Amazon, bookshop.com I think it's called, or .org. But yeah, it's available most
wherever
places.
You get your books.
Yeah, basically.
That's where you can find it.
And it's also on Audible as well.
Oh,
really?
Yeah. Okay.
And Kindle as well.
Cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So cool.
Okay.
Well, like I said, this has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone.
Yeah. Cheers.